we will continue with the Christmas story. Today's story is called Christmas to the Rescue Again. The clicky-clack of the train tracks was a hypnotic and soothing sound to Andy. "How are you doing, Nosee?" Andy whispered to the senior, partially blind dog he had just rescued from the cold weather while waiting at the train station. Nosee looked up and smiled, panting with his tongue hanging out. The train was only about half full on this early Christmas morning. Andy and Nosee had a row of seats all to themselves. A young lady walked down the aisle, noticed them, and issued a look of surprise as she passed. "Hope she isn't going to complain about you being on the train," Andy thought out loud. Andy closed his eyes with Nosee in his lap, hoping for at least a brief nap. A couple of minutes later, he was awakened by a voice. "Excuse me," she said. Andy looked up and noticed the same young lady that had passed by earlier. "I don't mean to bother you, but I couldn't help but notice your dog," she smiled. "Oh, I found him outside the train station while waiting for the train," he explained. "Someone who works at the station said he was abandoned and had been there for a while, wandering around outside." "What's his name?" "His name is Nosee," he replied. "The train station employees who were feeding him gave him that name." "No. See, because they think he is going blind and he doesn't get around very well." "Hi, Nosee," she said as she slowly reached down to pet him. Nosee looked up with approval. "He seems to like you," Andy noticed. "You like dogs?" "Yes. ESA and cats, birds, bunnies, pigs," she smiled. "I also live in Sanderson," he said. "You must be heading home too." "Yes," she agreed, "and several hours late because of the weather delay." "Would you like to sit here with us?" Andy offered after a brief pause. "Okay," she said, taking a seat next to Andy and Nosee. "I'm Lori," she smiled. "I'm Andy," he replied. "So are you heading home to your family for Christmas?" Lori asked. "Heading home for Christmas, yes. As far as family, it is just me and now Nose," Andy replied. "What about you?" Andy asked. "No family at home," she replied. "Well, yes, actually. Why did you decide to become a vet?" Andy inquired. "Years ago, I was engaged to a wonderful guy, and 2 weeks before the wedding, my fiancée, she choked up, was killed in a car accident. I went into a deep depression, and after a while," she continued, "I made the decision to dedicate my life to helping others, in my case, helping animals. It saved my life," she admitted. "It gave me a reason to get up in the morning. I found that when I was helping animals, I wasn't depressed." "So sorry for your loss," he consoled her. "Thank you," she replied. "My fiancé was killed the day before Christmas, so each year I travel to a nearby town on that day and offer free vet services to a local shelter. I try to bring some Christmas cheer to the shelter workers and to the pets that are there. My work is done, and I am on my way home." "What about you?" Lori inquired. "I had a business meeting that finished up yesterday, and I'm heading home now," Andy explained. Andy and Lori continued their conversation until the first light of morning could be seen out of the train windows. Andy figured. "The sun is coming up," Lori observed. "Oh, and Merry Christmas," Lori said with a smile. "Merry Christmas to you too," Andy replied. The train pulled into the small Sanderson station under clearing but cold skies. The train stopped. Lori and Andy rose from their seats and walked off the train. Nosee was still in Andy's arms. Once inside the warmth of the one-room train station, they waited together for their suitcases. "I was wondering," they both said to each other in unison before they stopped and giggled together. "I was thinking that it would be a good idea to get Nosee checked out." Andy paused. "And maybe I could bring him into your clinic." "Yes, of course," Lori smiled. "Why don't we go there now?" "It's Christmas morning and I don't want to impose, Guy," Abby explained. "Not a problem at all," Lori interrupted. "It will be my Christmas present to you and Nose." After getting into their cars and leaving the train station, Andy followed Lori to her vet clinic. Lori unlocked the front door of the clinic and they went in. Andy noticed the simple and cheery decor of the waiting area. Photos of pets adorned the walls. A small green Christmas tree was on the counter, and all the ornaments were animal-related. "This is really nice," Andy complimented as he looked at the tree. "Thanks," Laurie replied. "Some ornaments represent a homeless Pete that has found a home, and some ornaments are for pets that have passed on and gone to the Rainbow Bridge." "Wow," Andy replied as he looked up at Laurie. "You have a big heart for the animals." Andy proceeded to put Nosee up on an exam table. Laurie did a preliminary once-over on Nosee. "Now let's check him for a microchip," Laurie said as she waved the microchip scanner around Nosee. "We have to make sure to check him all over for a microchip because some of the chips move around over time," Laurie explained. "No chip," she confirmed. Andy watched as Laurie examined Nosee's ears and teeth. "I'll draw some blood and have some tests run," Laurie explained as she looked up at Andy and smiled. "You really seem to like what you do," Andy smiled back. While Laurie finished up her examination, Andy looked around the small vet office. The bright and happy feeling of the surroundings brought a newfound warmth to Andy's heart. "Okay," Laurie stated, "overall, I don't see anything seriously wrong with Nosee. He is probably between 10 and 12 years old and has probably been on his own for a while. He has some senior dog eye issues and is partially blind but can still have a full life ahead of him. Nothing that love and attention won't cure." News. Andy sighed with relief as he took Nosee off the table. "We will get the blood test results back in a few days," Laurie said. "In the meantime, I will call the train station where you found him and ask if they can put up a found dog sign just in case someone is missing him and is looking for him. I really think he was dumped off, though. Many people dump off older pets for various reasons. So sad, actually." "That is sad," Andy agreed. "I don't understand how anyone could do that." Laurie approached Nosee, who was curled up on the floor in a corner. "Nosee, I have another Christmas present for you," Laurie smiled as she brought out a small dog bed, a new collar, and a bag of treats. Andy grinned as Nosee looked up with his panting tongue out of mouth smile. "It's almost 9 o'clock and it is Christmas morning," Andy noticed as he looked at Laurie. A few moments passed as they looked at each other. "I was wondering," they both said to each other in unison before they stopped and giggled together. A repeat of what had happened earlier in the morning. They both laughed. "Why don't you and Nosee come over to my place for a Christmas breakfast? I can't promise anything fancy, though." "That sounds great," Andy accepted. "This has been one special Christmas for me." "Me too," Laurie added. "And I will bet it has been a good Christmas for Nosee. Funny thing," Andy said, "less than 24 hours ago, it looked like it was going to be a not-so-good Christmas when I was stranded in that train station because of the bad weather. Then, because of the bad weather, I found Nosee. Next, because of Nosee, I met you. This has made it a really nice Christmas." "I know," Laurie agreed. "Meeting you and Nosee has made it a nice Christmas for me also." "It sounds like Nosee has rescued us both from a not-so-good Christmas," Andy observed. "Interesting how that works. They put Nosee into a pet carrier and then put him in Andy's car. All three headed off to Laurie's house. In the months to come, Andy and Laurie became inseparable and fell in love. Nosee was very happy in his new home and somehow knew he was both the rescued and the rescuer. It is now 1 year later, Christmas Eve, and both Andy and Laurie are returning home from her tradition of a day of free vet services in a nearby town. The clicky-clack of the train tracks was once again a hypnotic and soothing sound to both Andy and Laurie as they sat together holding hands. "1 year ago on this same train I met you," Andy reminisced. "Yes, you and Nosee were sitting in this exact same seat when I was walking down the aisle and noticed you too," Laurie smiled. "I knew there was something special about you right from the start," Andy admitted. "I felt the same about you," Laurie agreed. A couple of minutes later, something caught Laurie's eyes. "Look, there's the conductor coming down the aisle with the dog Yui." Laurie paused. "That's I-N. That is Nosee," she exclaimed. The conductor stopped next to Laurie and Andy. "Nosee has something to give you," the conductor stated as he handed Nosee to Laurie. "There is something attached to his collar," Andy noticed. Andy took the small box from Nosee's collar and proceeded into the aisle next to Laurie's seat. "Laurie, you're the love of my life. This last year has been amazing. Sweetheart, will you marry me?" Andy asked after getting down on one knee. A stunned Laurie paused to absorb the moment. "Yes," she excitedly proclaimed, teary-eyed. "Yes, yes, yes." Andy took the ring from the box that was attached to Nosee's collar and placed it on Laurie's finger. The other passengers around them and the conductor were all smiles. "How did you arrange this?" Laurie asked. "They don't usually allow dogs on the train." "Dog, I don't see any dogs here," the conductor smiled after overhearing Laurie. After they arrived at the train station, they retrieved their suitcases. "Could I interest you in a Christmas morning breakfast?" Laurie asked. "Sounds familiar. The last Christmas morning breakfast I had was last year with you and I fell in love," Andy smiled. As they exited the train station with Nosee